Well, hello again, guys. How are you? I think I can answer that question, and it might be not too happy at the moment. Well, I hope this video cheers you up. I'm here outside Newcastle's team hotel, the Pan Pacific, in the Marina Bay area of Singapore, where just moments ago the team coaches pulled up there, and it was a story I broke yesterday. I had to jump off a water slide to do so. There was no Alexander Isak here with the party. Then, a few hours later, again jumping off a water slide to break the story that Alexander Isak has told Newcastle's hierarchy that he wants to explore a move away from the club this summer. Yeah, a pretty big deal, and one I'm going to explore in great depth during this video. I'll tell you the inside story of how we've come to this point. Why does Alexander Isak want to leave Newcastle? What happens now? What happens next? And I'll be answering the question, do I think he will join Liverpool this summer? But before that, we'll just take a little wander around to the front of the hotel. I do know you like to be on location here. I'm in Singapore all weekend, loads more content to come. I've just been inside now talking to Dan Burn, Bruno Guimaraes. I'll be seeing Eddie Howe tomorrow. Hopefully there might be a little bit of access to training. Beyond that, we've got the match. It's then out to Korea, so loads more to come. But this is where Newcastle are currently staying. Bruno, bless him, looked a little bit bleary-eyed when we had a chat with him there inside. Lovely surrounds. This is a beautiful place, super clean, super safe. It always feels as if there's someone from the tourist board lurking just out of sight, just making sure that everything is going okay for you. You know, I cannot recommend Singapore enough. There's my bit for the Singapore tourist board. But this is the hotel. The players are inside there now. They've just arrived. A full day flight, really. I had a quick chat with Anthony Gordon upstairs. I think one or two of them did find it difficult to sleep. They'll have a little bit of a rest now before training this afternoon, and the advice is for them to stay awake all day, and there's certainly plenty to do here, water slides included. But I'm going to go back to my own hotel now, and I'm going to tackle all those key questions and take you inside my story yesterday, the story that went around the world. Alexander Isak wants to leave Newcastle. Let's go. I told you Singapore was pretty, didn't I? Yeah, but everything isn't rosy in Newcastle United's garden right now, and I'm going to take you for a little bit of a wander through the famous Shangri-La Hotel, where many teams often use as the pre-season base when they are out here. And yeah, very picturesque it is too. And I'm going to try and play the role of a journalist. Yeah, I should be okay at this, and I'm going to ask myself some questions, which I believe are the questions you would want to ask me. First of all, the news. What's happened this week? Well, okay, let's revisit, and I'll put links in the description below the line here. I've got a big inside story read revealing exactly what's gone on this week in the past 12 months at Newcastle. Click on that link, please. But let's go over some of that now. Well, to go back 7 days before the game at Celtic last weekend, Isak reported an issue with his thigh. Now, come Monday, he was able to train with the team, but I can reveal after only 5 minutes he walked out of that session. Now, there were subsequent scans which I believe haven't shown any damage. Those scans have come back clear, so you can read between the lines if you like, but Newcastle can't say to the player, you're not injured, you've got to get on the flight and come here. So they've got to respect that. And while he says there is a tightness and an issue in his thigh, that is the reason officially that he is at home and that he isn't here in Singapore. Now, that was on Monday. He hasn't trained in the 4 or 5 days since. What has happened since then? Well, yesterday it was our story, I've already touched on this, which has really accelerated that. Alexander Isak has communicated to Newcastle's hierarchy, the staff inside the training ground, his teammates are aware of it too, that he wants to move on. Now, this isn't a new thing, as in he's only communicated this in the past 24 hours, I hasten to add. There's been several inside the club who I think have been aware of it for some time. Now, why is that the case? Well, this doesn't just go back 1 week to pre-Celtic. It doesn't even go back to the end of last season. This goes back 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 months. Let me take you back to March 24, when Amanda Staveley and Murdoch Adusi were still at the club, allies of Alexander Isak, who were instrumental in bringing him here in the first place in the summer of 2022. Now, Isak, and I think this is entirely warranted, he wanted more money, given what he had done during the first 2 seasons here. He looked at what he was paid, very well paid, by the way, but thought open market value he was worth more. I think that's fair enough, and clearly Amanda and Murdoch, they agree, because in the March time, He was promised a soft promise, a hard promise, I don't know. But Alexander Isak in his camp thought that come the end of the previous season, 2024, that more money, improved, enhanced terms would be on the way. And the feeling was that he would probably sign that deal too. Now, in the July, Amanda and Murad left the club against their wishes, it has to be said. A new management structure was established with Darren Eales, the chief executive, brought in Paul Mitchell as the new sporting director without Eddie Howe's prior knowledge, it should be said. Now, Mitchell came in and immediately during some of his press briefings and, you know, those opening addresses in private, he ruffled a few feathers, he upset some. Now, a lot of what he actually said when you broke it down, it did make sense. It was more so the delivery. It was needless at times, and he got off on the wrong foot with several inside the building. And one of those was Alexander Isak. Why? Well, Paul Mitchell looked at the situation, and don't forget this was just on the back hot on the PSR peril, the final week of June when Newcastle had to sell Elliot Anderson and Yankuba Minte against their wishes. So Paul Mitchell looked at the situation he'd walked into and said, why is Alexander Isak, with 4 years to run on his contract, he's already among the highest earners at the club, why is he getting a new deal? He said, no, you can't have that. We can't afford to pay you that. That is a business decision, and as a business decision, an accountancy decision, I think you and I would understand that. What it doesn't account for is the human reaction at the other end of it. Alexander and his camp were, from what I've been told, absolutely furious. Isak then starts the season in the manner he did. Now, it'd be very easy to reflect on last year and think Alexander Isak was wonderful. 27 goals. Go back to the first 7 games, guys. He only scored 1 in that period. I was down at places like Fulham and Bournemouth and others when the body language was a great concern. I could see that on the sidelines, and those certainly inside the dressing room and among Eddie Howe and his staff and teammates even as well. They could see it too. On the back of that, in October time, and this was after I revealed a story saying that Isak's contract talks were shelved, there was still reports going right up until the autumn time saying a new deal was due. It wasn't. That had been parked in the summer by Paul Mitchell. Eddie Howe in October with us took the unusual step media-wise. You know, he's very straight, he's brilliant. He, you know, in terms of PR, Eddie Howe is wonderful for the football club in many, many ways, and that is one of them. He took an unusual step with us last October, and he sent a message back to the dressing room. Now, don't for a minute think he wouldn't have done that with us without speaking to his players first. That's how Eddie Howe operates. But he said if these players want to see more ambition from the club, yes, it is up to the club to satisfy that and show that, but it's a two-way street. If they want to be Champions League players, well, they've got to go and perform like it too and do that on the pitch. He said this in public, he said that in private. What we then saw on the back of that, yes, there was 1 or 2 other wobbles, but there was an upsurge in form, especially from the likes of Isak. What was the outcome of that? Well, it was the first domestic trophy in 70 years with, funny enough, Alexander Isak scoring one of the goals against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final. But after that, and again, you've got to be honest here, Isak had the difficult start of the season, the brilliant, fantastic flying middle, and then he tailed off towards the end. There was a feeling, I think, among some that once that Carabao Cup victory, once that legendary status was secured, he came off it slightly. Now, he continued to score goals. He took his tally to 27, as we said, and there were some important goals amidst that. But on the second last weekend of the season, down at Arsenal, a huge key game. I was there. Alexander Isak didn't get off the bus. We didn't know that. We thought he was there with the squad in London. That's because he was. He reported muscle fatigue on the morning of the game and he didn't play. And there was a feeling among some that at that point, he just started to check out. Now, before that, in March, Darren Eales had said to us on the record that Isak's contract situation would be revisited at the end of the season. Do you know my reaction when he said that? And I said this to others at the time. He doesn't want a new contract. Alexander Isak felt and resented, I used that word before, furious. There was a real angst there with the club, with the hierarchy, that he thought he had missed out on something he was owed in terms of, let's just use these numbers for argument's sake, in terms of taking his wage from £150 a week to £250 a week. Yeah, you can probably read between the lines on that one. So come the end of the season, yeah, Isak didn't want a new contract. He and his camp knew there was the interest there from Liverpool. And this is where we've arrived at now. My information is that Liverpool are readying a British club record offer. Alexander Isak and his people know this. He's at home on Tyneside, nursing his thigh. But again, you guys read between the lines. Now, What's Newcastle's take on this? What is their stance? Newcastle don't want to sell. There is a scenario whereby Liverpool might not be able to meet their demands. They might not be able to sell that one extra player they perhaps need to fund this deal. In that case, what could happen? Well, Alexander Isak could spend the next season at Newcastle, albeit probably against his wishes, and to keep him sweetened, to recognise the player he is and his market worth, yes, they might give him some more money on top of his contract, but it would probably be with a gentleman's agreement to go next season. What we aren't going to see, I'm pretty certain of this, is a 5-year Alexander Isak commits his future to the club with no release clauses. I don't think that would be the case at all. So, if that offer lands from Liverpool, as we expect it will do, the number, I don't know, it will certainly be a British record more than the £180 million they paid for Florian Wirtz. It'll have to be. Newcastle have got a decision to make, but they're in a strong position, an incredibly strong position. He's got 3 years to run on his contract, but with all players, and these are some of the conversations I've had this morning and yesterday with those very close to the situation, there's always a good time to sell a player, and while the preference is to keep Alexander Isak, absolutely, he's Yasser Al-Rumayyan's favourite player, Eddie Howe loves him, there's no problem there, there's no issue between Isak and his teammates and Eddie Howe has made him and the staff around him and the environment into the player he is. He wasn't this world-class striker when he arrived from Sociedad as a 21, 22-year-old a few years ago. So there is that appreciation. There's no problem here. There's no big fallout. But Isak himself, at this point in his career, and I don't have an issue with this, he wants to move on. He doesn't want to play in the Champions League. He wants to win the Champions League, and the contract situation last summer and Paul Mitchell's decision, coupled with what Isak in his camp saw as, how should we put this, the club not coming through on the promises of ambition he thought were there when he first arrived. Now, new training grounds. There isn't a spade in the ground. No new stadium. The signings. Alexander Isak and others watched the club go 3 windows without a signing. Players don't like that. Players don't want that. They want the club to show ambition, tangible ambition, rather than just talking about it in Amazon documentaries. When Eddie Howe said last year he'd come out of the summer with an unsettled dressing room, this was it, guys. I reported it at the time, and I know a lot of you don't like to hear. I remember writing a big piece for the Daily Mail, and you say I'm trying to, upset things and causing trouble. I'm not. I'm just telling you what the truth is. The story yesterday, Alexander Isak has told the club he wants to go to the truth. You read some of the replies. I know it's not news you want to hear. If you want to go and read somebody else who tells you everything's great and he's not going anywhere, there's always a version out there for you. Feel free, but I'm here to tell you what's really going on to the best of my knowledge, and I will always do that. And Alexander Isak, at this time, wants to move on. I don't have a problem with that. A player's career is short. He's 26 in September. He can earn, and he probably should be earning more than Newcastle can afford to pay him. He does deserve to be winning, competing for the Champions League and league titles. I don't have a problem with that at all. He's given Newcastle 3 brilliant years. He's given them one of the greatest days you or I will ever experience at Wembley. That will never be bettered. Wonderful. The hairs on the back of my neck just stand up thinking about that day every time. Isak was a big part of that. Personally, as a journalist and someone who's based in Newcastle, has got Newcastle supporting children, I wouldn't really begrudge Alexander Isak. But Newcastle have got that decision to make. Do they say, no, tell you what, you're too good, we can't replace you, the message it sends about the project and everything else, you're staying, you're not going anywhere, pal, you've got 3 years to run your deal, let's talk again next summer. That is fraught with risk. It risks having a very unhappy player, it risks upsetting others in the dressing room, and as well, what's to say Alexander Isak's market value with 2 years to go on his deal next summer will be that £150 million. But if Liverpool are to make a deal happen this summer, they're going to have to pay the money. They really are. There's no, just because Isak wants to go, there's no cheap deal to be done here. They've got to come up with that British record and then some. It's got to be in the region of £150 million. If that happens, and this goes back to the question I said I would answer earlier, do I think we'd see a deal and Isak would move? Yes, I do. And I know now that some of his teammates internally suspect that too. If the money is there, and Newcastle know that they can go and invest that pretty quickly, and here you go, and insert Benjamin Sesko is a live target, as in inquiries. What was it, the phrase that was used with me yesterday? An exploratory inquiry. Yeah, Newcastle love exploring. Us journalists love using that word too. An exploratory inquiry is being made. Now, Benjamin Sesko won't be available next summer. If he's available now, and Newcastle think he's the guy to come in and replace Alexander Isak, as well as Johan Wissa from Brentford too, there might just be a savvy business decision to make to say, get the money he is worth, maximise the sale now, and then reinvest as quickly as possible. So do I think Alexander Isak will join Liverpool this summer? I'm not going to sit on the fence here, guys, and I'm happy to be wrong on it. I really am. Do I think he will go? Yes or no? Yes, I think he probably will. A lot still needs to happen for that to be the case, but my latest information is that, and I'll spell this out in a series of facts. Alexander Isak wants to go. Liverpool want him. They are readying a British record offer, even though that may involve selling one of Diaz or Nunez. If that's the case, Newcastle have a decision to make. They would rather not sell. They want to find a way to keep the player, but it might just make sense all round to do the deal. So that's where we are, guys. Tell me what you think below the line on all of that. It's a hell of a lot to take in. Now, there's a wider issue here that I'm going to explore over the weekend in a piece. And why does Alexander Isak feel like this? Because it's not, to go back to the start, I'm going to walk down back towards that little garden. I like it there. It's not all rosy at the moment. What is the club? Where are PIF? Who's communicating with the dressing room? Who's reassuring Alexander Isak? There's no sporting director. There's an outgoing CEO who's not here. What is the club? There seems to be a real disconnect between the elite environment and that brilliant, close-knit, tight group at the training ground, and then what happens elsewhere. What is there elsewhere? Now, that might be unfair on some who are doing a lot of good work in there, and they're certainly trying. But when it goes back to PIF and the majority owners, it's gotten to the point now, guys, where some serious questions are going to have to be asked. They say all the right things. I wrote a piece back in September. Do PIF still care? And I spoke to lots of people around it, and I returned the resounding verdict, yes they do, but my payoff in that piece was actions will speak louder than words. What have we seen since by way of actions? Nothing really, guys, to be honest with you. No new sporting director, no, I'm going over old ground, but it's got to be said. No CEO, no sporting director, no training ground, no announcement on the stadium. They need to do more if they're going to keep the likes of Isak happy and to show ambition to others as well. But this isn't a really gloomy situation. The narrative in football can change quickly. It really can. I just think now that knowing all I know, knowing what I've known for 12 months, and certainly knowing what I've learned in the past 48 hours, I think an Isak sale might just be the right decision for player and club going forward. So, yeah, guys, there's going to be so much more to come from this trip. I've been up at the team hotel there this morning. I'll put the links in the description below the line as well. I've spoken to Bruno, I've spoken to Dan Byrne, had a nice little chat with Anthony Gordon. Kieran Trippier was about. A lot of the backroom staff and hierarchy are there as well. So a lot is there for you. They've got Eddie Howe as well, you know, looked tired when he got off the bus, bless him. I wonder if he slept a wink on that flight. There's certainly a lot going on and a lot to consider right now. But they have got brilliant players, they've got a brilliant staff, but they need to be better and more efficient and more dynamic at a lot of what they do. Now, just a quick little insert. New Zealand's Martin de Bravka isn't here either. I'm told he is expected to come and join up with the group in Korea. Johan Wissa too. I've had a lot of confidence on this deal externally for a long time now. I was the first one to break news of the interest a few weeks ago in my Newcastle Confidential column. Everything tells me Wissa will happen, but it's not as easy to negotiate. They never are, as perhaps Newcastle and Brentford would like. But again, Wissa not dissimilar to Isak's situation. He's only got 2 years to run this deal. There's always a right time to sell. And I think for Brentford now, that right time is to sell, and Newcastle want to buy. So Isak out, Sesko and Wissa in? Perhaps. Watch this space, guys. But there's loads more to come before then. Over the weekend, I'll be speaking to Eddie Howe at the team hotel tomorrow. Please, I'm out of practice. I haven't said this yet. Like, comment, subscribe, do everything. I'm so glad to be back. I really am. Thank you so much. Last season, the interaction, the comments in the last video below the line were just so lovely. They really were. And yeah, let's go into this season and hope it's a brilliant one. Newcastle never not news either. On the back page of the Daily Mail today, it's the inside spread as well, talking about Alexander Isak. It's a wonderful football club to cover, and you really are a wonderful audience. Great meeting some of the guys from the Singapore fan club out here as well this morning. So I've spoken for long enough now. Interact below the line, and I'll try to get back to as many as I possibly can. One last little scan of this place. Loads more to come, guys. See you soon. Bye bye.